Mirror's Edge Catalyst may not have had the greatest story out there, but it's definitely got a dense world with some fascinating history behind it. I've already done 2 videos on the lore and world of Mirror's Edge Catalyst, but it's been a while since. So far I've talked about the runners and Black November, but next we're going to be taking it to the overall history of Cascadia and the City of Glass. It's a large and ambitious bit of lore to tackle, meaning it's going to be quite the video. So I decided, since it's been a while and the channel's got a new look since, let me recap and slightly remake the existing episodes of this Mirror's Edge video series, and look at what we've covered so far, before heading into some grand and dark territory. This is the story so far of the lore and world of Mirror's Edge Catalyst. The runners are our main faction, a group of messengers, couriers and so-called criminals within this conglomerate-driven society. They stick to the rooftops and make amends by finding the fastest route and delivering packages in one piece to some of the higher-ups, or the corporate houses of the city. They operate as off-grids, separated from the conglomerate's hand. Almost every runner has a tattoo called runner tags, which indicate what kind of runner they are. There are 2 kinds of runners, those who deliver and those who are retired, who also serve as handlers and lead their own runner organization. They are known as trackers. They communicate with runners while they are on the job and brief them on their mission. Runners are equipped with a few gadgets that assist in finding the quickest routes around the City of Glass. They are equipped with something called a beat, which highlights those faster alternative paths. It's unknown how the runners came to be, but it's clear that they've been around for a decent while, a couple of decades at least. The main characters we get to know throughout the Catalyst storyline are Faith Connors, Noah, Icarus, Nomad, and Birdman. There's an additional character who appears in Catalyst's prequel story, Exordium. This character is Celeste, who also appears in the original Mirror's Edge game. Faith plays a huge role in the runner faction, as she has influenced every runner character in some way, shape, or form. Faith is a brash, stubborn, and rebellious, yet talented woman, whose life is slightly out of hand, and I mean, the story starts with her in juvie of all places. Her parents, Martin and Erica Connor, were killed in the infamous November riots, one of the most deadly and most important times in Cascadian history. A 7-year-old Faith escaped the riots by going underground with her younger sister Kate, but after some tear gas is dropped on the ground, Kate has an asthma attack where Faith struggles to get her out and leaves her in a panic. Throughout Catalyst, Faith's past haunts her with memories of the November riots, and she confronts those horrors throughout the storyline by encountering her long-lost sister and confronting the man behind her parents' death, Gabriel Kruger. Faith is the best runner in Cascadia, and everyone looks up to her skills and her bravery. Her stubbornness saved many people but also killed a few in the process. One of those few people was her mentor and adoptive father, Noah. Noah, during his younger years, was a frequent runner and climber who was passionate about the agile activity. His father died in the much earlier Triumvirate War, and because of this, his mother went into a deep depression, resulting in Noah having to find friends and relatives who would take him in. During this search, Noah faced some abusive reactions that would shape his distrust of authorities and society. He discovered the corporate encroachment and found others that shared his distrust and beliefs. 2 of these other people were Faith's late parents. But with their death during the November riots, Noah was the first person who was able to take Faith in and raise her into adulthood. Because of the ongoing conflict between Black November, another faction that Noah was very vaguely associated with, and the Conglomerate, he has decided to no longer take sides and stay in the middle with the runners. And while raising Faith, he has tried to persuade her to adopt this approach as well. Noah is a tracker for his set of runners, and we see him commandeering Faith and Icarus, another more recent runner, on various missions to avoid Krugersek and a nanite of sorts called Reflection. A nanite that eventually ends up killing Noah after he is captured by Krugersek and experimented on with it. Icarus is one of these secondary runners, and is an arrogant and young runner, who was inspired by the culture and the cause and ended up joining them. He is considered a fast learner as he quickly adapted to the runner lifestyle. He is considered by other runners to be very reliable and safe, and with Faith's absence in juvie, he became the lead runner. Constantly being compared to Faith, Icarus is not exactly fond of her. He runs for the thrill of it, just like Faith, but unlike Faith, Icarus is a lot more tactical and logical, whereas she is a lot more chaotic and confrontational. He and Noah formed a very close, kind of father-son bond in Faith's absence, and when he busts Faith out of juvie, he tries to prevent her from skewering his reputation, which ultimately fails. Not much is known about Icarus' early life though, but in later life, as in the post-credit scene of Catalyst, we see him and Faith warm up to each other, after an entire first act of pure rivalry. It's even implied that Faith has some feelings towards him. Next we have Nomad, or as I like to call him, the Dalton Rowe of Catalyst. Because like Dalton, he wears a beanie, he's agile, and he's a rebellious street artist. He's a light-hearted and likable oak. Nomad seems to suffer from amnesia, and according to his bio, he doesn't remember when he was born or who his father is. Because of this gap in his memory, he has come up with his own story of his early life that he lives by. He says that his dad left before he was born and that his mother might have died during the November riots. He lived on the streets while other kids went to school. He hustled with the outcasts of the city, the outcasts being the bottom economic division of Cascadian society. He eventually discovered self-expression through his graffiti, and in his graffiti he depicts his distaste for the Conglomerate. He also knows how to hack into the many holographic billboards around the city. He first met Faith 10 years before the Catalyst storyline, and he looks up to her as the older sister he never had, which explains their sibling-like bond. Nomad isn't your typical runner, he isn't really a messenger. He's more of a voice for the runners. He aids other runners during their missions, similar to Noah, and he voices political opinions for the runners. The last of the runner characters is Birdman, who has long retired. He was there before runners were an official faction or idea. He was a teen during the Kruger uprising and became an unsung hero of sorts. He used to work for a certain Dieter Kruger, someone who we know nothing about or have ever seen. Birdman fought with a group of conspirators against Omnistat in the Civil War. He's not a fan of war and would despise it even more after Cascadia was formed from several civil wars. That's when he realized there was no turning back for him. He couldn't return to a normal, regular life. So while the Conglomerate was progressively taking over the city of Glass and Cascadia, Birdman found others like him and told them what he knew about the fastest routes around the city, marking a sort of beginning of runner culture. Birdman got his name after he stopped running and started working with birds or pigeons. He used these pigeons to do his courier work and feeds them at his hiding spot on a roof somewhere in the city. That's it for the runners, but there's a faction out there who are a more dark and violent alternative to the runners, known as Black November. All starts with a certain woman, known as Rebecca Thane. A scary woman with very aggressive intentions and a much more confrontational approach to overthrowing the Conglomerate. She's the founder of Black November. She's a freedom fighter first and foremost, but she'll go to very extreme lengths to achieve her goals. She was an idealist who sought workers' rights and justice. She was rivaled by other movement leaders such as Noah and Faith's parents. But unlike Noah, who stuck to the rooftops after the riots, Rebecca continued to protest. Black November is a faction based off Rebecca's mentality and ethics. It came together after the November riots, where she had had enough of the deaths. Black November also appears in the Exordium storyline, where we also see Celeste, who was provided with protection and permission to traverse through their territory in exchange for some runners to do some jobs for Black November. But shit hit the fan when Celeste went on a job for them to steal a prototype of a cancer vaccine. They would have to give Celeste a bit of the vaccine so she could help her sister with melanoma cancer. But in the middle of the vaccine exchange between Celeste and Black November, Faith stole the vaccine and made a run for it. Black November have a questionable ideology. They, or Rebecca, believe that there are no innocent civilians in the struggle and that those who do not fight against the Conglomerate in some way are indirectly supporting it. It's a tough ideology because riots are where people die, and not everyone wants to die for a cause that might not succeed, at least for the near future. So what Rebecca is doing here is trying to make everyone targets, either for her or for the Conglomerate. The Conglomerate has been running Cascadia for 14 years by the time we start the Catalyst storyline, but they were already shifting into power about 20 years prior to their official ruling. The corporate houses have entrenched themselves firmly since the founding, and the majority of the mid-caste and low-caste prefer the current societal system of Cascadia, saying it's the best system so far, much better than the harsh growing pains of the Omnistat era, an era we'll get into. The Conglomerate has a policy that highlights what's acceptable in Cascadia and how it affects an employee's life. KrugerSec back up this policy, and those who violate the policy are sentenced without any trials. Brutal. The punishments for violations of the policy include temporary suspension of certain rights to contract termination. Terminating a contract is very similar to being demoted to one caste, being demoted within the societal class. Serious offenders of the policy were permanently deemed outcast and work in the infamous Grey Lands. Based on this structure, it's implied that casual or light offenders were able to redeem themselves after being demoted, whereas the extreme offenders were immediately sent out to the Grey Lands. Some vanished from the Grey Lands, while some joined factions of rebels or the underworld, like Nomad joining the Runners. The Conglomerate closely monitor the city of Gloss with surveillance around almost every block. They also provide official citizens of Gloss with biometric wristbands known as grid links. A grid link provides information about your identity and financial status. If you were to disable or rip off your grid link, you were subject to contract termination, though some accidental scenarios were an exception. Outcasts and off-grids have no grid link though, showing how much the Conglomerate doesn't care for those living in poverty. In one of the law documents titled "The Conglomerate Seizes Power," it said that among the general populace, especially the mid-caste, there was an outrage at the protesters due to the damage and deaths caused during the riots. The Conglomerate called out the assembly and their poor handling of the situation. Large gatherings and protests were forbidden, giving the Conglomerate time to strengthen. The Conglomerate kicked the assembly out of power, and the path was free to rule Cascadia, which brings us to the current state of Cascadia. The Conglomerate aimed to use the city of Gloss as a way of symbolizing their greatness, but now we get to the conflict between Black November and the Conglomerate. The Conglomerate's societal structure and rise to power led to the deaths of many people, but all those deaths were just swept under the rug by the Conglomerate. Faith, Rebecca, and Noah lost good people to these events, and so Black November was started out of a thirst for revenge and a greater freedom, all driven by Rebecca. But there's a little bit of a problem. Due to Black November's nature, would it be wise to let them win and gain political power, especially with Rebecca behind the wheel? Rebecca is one of the most dangerous people in Cascadia, so imagine her at the helm. She could easily go from a supposed freedom fighter to a powerful killer governing Cascadia. Rebecca is a woman who is solely driven by revenge. Her methods and her attitude are hardcore and almost merciless. Play the Catalyst campaign and see what I mean. So if she was to fulfill her goal of overthrowing the Conglomerate, would she feel like she accomplished something? Or would she feel like there's a lot more to be done to rid those associated with the Conglomerate or KrugerSec? Who knows? Rebecca is not a good person, at least not after the November riots. Her actions paint a grim picture of what Black November represents. In a way, Black November is an organization of anti-hero freedom fighters. Now there are some things about Black November and especially Rebecca that I haven't covered in this video, but that's because I wanted to focus on the Black November and Conglomerate conflict. Black November is a very interesting and challenging subject and entity when it comes to Mirror's Edge. They meet this weird middle ground and their morals are skewered by a single out-of-hand character, a troublesome and bloodthirsty member of Cascadian society. She is hostile towards the Conglomerate and slightly hostile to the Runners as well. Rebecca is so blinded by revenge that she lacks empathy and bathes in her brutality. It's truly a shame that the world of Catalyst doesn't truly come through within the story, and that the story of Catalyst just isn't that strong to begin with. But when you look into the lore and everything surrounding the bigger story, you get something a lot more interesting and a lot more valuable to follow. The world building via collectibles is pretty fantastic, and gives Cascadia the soul it deserves. and through this series I aim to share it with you guys by compiling video essays that I can only hope you enjoy. Mirror's Edge as a franchise is pretty much dead in the water, as servers from all games have been pulled, we haven't got any official content from the series since the release of Catalyst, and we haven't heard any clear news about the franchise's future. It's a shame, really. Mirror's Edge is like a passion project that evolved and fell into obscurity. Part of me is happy that there's no other game like it, similar to the Hitman franchise. But unlike the Hitman franchise, Mirror's Edge hasn't had the longest nor the most consistent run, which is the other part of me that is a little sad that we don't have many games like Mirror's Edge. But never mind that now. We've still got some Cascadian stories to tell, from more additional characters and the history of the different locations and brands of Cascadia. And the next episode is the big one, but not the final one. It's a grander tale of a grander scale. Let's talk societal warfare. What's up everyone, hope you enjoyed the video. Just a slight channel update or notice. Due to the slight overhaul of this channel's visual style, meaning the watermarks on all of my previous videos before the recent Freedom Cry video, I decided I'm gonna do slight remasters of certain videos that were like really affected by the watermark. The whole reason I even kept the watermark was because I wanted the channel to have a sort of late night TV kind of Adult Swim kind of feel. But in the end I realized that maybe it's time to let that style go and just go the normal way. So this video is basically the first remaster or remake, and there's plenty of more to come. I'm actually thinking of remastering the 2 Hitman videos I did next, and making it into one long video, which I'm kind of excited for. I've got a crap ton of content coming, but in the meantime, Happy New Year, and I look forward to the 2023 gaming wrap-up. The wrap-ups are also something I might remaster into one nice like 3-4 minute video to kind of celebrate all the games I've covered or mentioned on the channel at least. So look forward to quite a few remasters. Other than that, it's been a busy year for me, meaning I didn't have much time to make videos. I mean, if you look at all the videos I've released this year compared to last year and the year before, I look like I've been slacking off this year. But I've just been super busy. Next year's gonna be even busier since I'm graduating next year, and I also have to get my screenwriting career off the ground. So I'll be busy networking and working on different screenplays while kind of doing this, you know, on the side. I'll try to see if I can't make time to at least do these videos, because I really do miss making these videos. So yeah, maybe if you want to take a look at what I'm working on, you know, in terms of screenwriting, you can check out my social links. Another thing you can find when you're checking out my social links is that I've also released a new music album, a compilation album titled Without Context. It's an experimental hip-hop album with a diverse range of beats, you know, from boom bap, drum and bass, dark wave, trip hop, psychedelia, and industrial. You know, I love variety in my music, and I love experimental music, and you know, I'm just not a big fan of a lot of mainstream hip-hop, so I was just like, you know what, let me make an experimental hip-hop album, since I love that genre a lot. And even then, I feel like that genre could do a bit more, and that's kind of what I was trying to do with this album. Even though I'm basically just setting a foundation. You can check it out on Bandcamp, YouTube, and soon on all other major streaming services. I'm really proud of that album, since I made all the beats, wrote all the lyrics, did all the engineering, and led the overall art direction of that album. So, you know, it's all done by my hand, and I'm very happy with what I came up with. I tried to make sure it was very polished, tried to make sure it was up to my standards. And while there were just a few little slip-ups, it's still pretty much what I wanted to make out of that album. So if you guys want to check that out, you can check that out. With all that being said, everyone stay safe, stay entertained, take care, take it easy, Happy New Year, cheers.